rhythm. Lie, 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 yeah, lie, 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 yai, lie, 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 page 10. Yedid nefesh av harachaman meshoch.
Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu l'halak ner shel Shabbat.
Shabbat. Thank you, Debbie. Thank you, Michael. Yasher koach. Shabbat shalom, everyone. Good to see all of you here this evening. Shabbat shalom to our friends who are on Zoom. We're going to be able to see them here, and they can hear us and participate, which I think is great. So let's take a moment to turn to the people sitting around us, greet each other, wish each other Shabbat Shalom, and please try to say hi to somebody that you've never met before. And it is possible. There are new people here, but you may have to move. That's the key. You might have to move a little bit. Arlene's doing it. Thank you. It is the mitzvah of Hachnasat Orchim, which is welcoming new people. Let's do that. Shabbat Shalom. Did you meet somebody that you didn't know before? I sure hope that you did. We have a group from Vilna here tonight. Not themselves, but their parents, their families came from Vilna. This is the Vilna connection right here. Pretty cool. We learned about each other's history just a few minutes ago. We are going to begin on page 12 in our prayer books with Psalm 95 to welcome Shabbat.
Lecho neranena l'Adonai, nariya letzor yishenu, nekadma fanav betodah, bizmirot nariya lo, nekadma fanav betodah, bizmirot nariya lo, ki el gadol Adonai umelech gadol al kol Elohim asher beyadav mechakrei haaretz v'toafot harim lo asher beyadav mechakrei haaretz v'toafot harim lo.
Page 13, sing to Adonai a new song. Sing to Adonai, all the earth.
Sing to Adonai a new song. Sing to Adonai all the earth. Sing to Adonai, bless God's name. Proclaim God's victory day after day. Please join with me. Tell of God's glory among the nations, God's wondrous deeds among all peoples.
For Adonai is great and much acclaimed. God is held in awe by all divine beings. All the gods of the peoples are mere idols, but Adonai made the heavens. Glory and majesty are before God. Strength and splendor are in God's temple.
The bottom of page 14, join with me. Or zarua la tzadik u yishrei lev simcha. Or zarua la tzadik u yishrei lev simcha. Simcho tzadikim b'Adonai, b'Adonai, v'hodu lezecher kodasho, lezecher kodasho. Or zarua la tzadik u yishrei lev simcha. Bottom of page 15. A psalm, sing to Adonai a new song. For God has worked wonders. Try it with me. God's right hand, God's holy arm, has won God victory. Adonai has manifested God's victory, has displayed God's triumph in the sight of the nations. God was mindful of God's steadfast love and faithfulness toward the house of Israel. All the ends of the earth beheld the victory of our God. Raise a shout to Adonai, all the earth. Break into joyous songs of praise. 16. Zamru l'Adonai bechinor, bechinor v'kol zimra. 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 בחצוצרות וקול שופר, הריעו לפני המלך אדוני. ירם הים ומלואו, תבל ויושביה, נהרות ימך וכף, יחר הרים ירננו. לפני אדוני, כי בא לשפוט הארץ, ישפוט תבל בצדק, וימים במישרים. Page 18. מזמור לדוד, הבו לאדוני בני אלים, הבו לאדוני, כבוד שמו, אלי, השתחוו לאדוני, בהדרה קודש, כל אדוני על המים, אל הכבוד הרים, אדוני על מים רבים, לי, Sing with me at the bottom of 19. Adonai Oz Le'amo Yitein, Adonai Yevarech et Amo Vashalom. Hai lai lai, lai 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 lai, lai 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 lai, hai lai lai lai, lai 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 lai, lai 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 lai, lai 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 lai, hai lai lai lai, lai 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 lai. Close your books.
You took my line.
Sorry.
But please, close your books. That was great spirit, by the way. Good singing and clapping and rhythm. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Temple Beth-El is the third congregation that I've served as a rabbi. Each community is different, of course, but there's one thing that synagogues all have in common, from Chicago to Omaha to New York and probably all over the world, and that is possibly the most often heard phrase in any and every congregation is, "This is how we've always done it." Now, if you've ever heard someone say that, or if you've said it yourself, there's a great parody video on YouTube you should check out. I'll put a link to it in the sermon when I send it out, but here's the summary of the video. It shows a bunch of old country Jews, maybe from Vilna, with long beards and payas, and they're davening in a little shul, probably in the shtetl. And one by one, as each man walks in to the synagogue, he greets the congregants with a joyful Shalom Aleichem. And he touches the mezuzah on the doorpost and kisses it. After a whole bunch of them stream in and do this, one guy comes in and he calls out Shalom Aleichem. And then he keeps on going. And he doesn't kiss the mezuzah. And suddenly, the davening stops cold. And everyone goes quiet. And one of the men in the shul shouts at him in disbelief, "What about the mezuzah? You didn't kiss the mezuzah," he says. And the guy looks puzzled. "Kiss the mezuzah? Why would I kiss a mezuzah?" "It's what we do," they all said to him. "Where is that written?" the guy says. And then on hearing this, the rabbi who's leading the service starts to faint, like his knees go weak, and he's like, "Oh!" And the men look to the guy and they say, "Look what you've done to the rabbi. It's not written, it's the rabbi's ruling. Everyone has to kiss the mezuzah. It's our custom." "Since when?" the poor guy asks. "I come to this shul every day, and we've never kissed the mezuzah." The men look at each other in astonishment. "Since last week." "Oi," says the guy, "I was out sick last week." It's very funny. That's how we've always done it. That's how we've always done it is something that we probably all say from time to time, and not to be intentionally hyperbolic. We say it because, well, as far as we can remember or choose to remember, we have always done it that way. We internalize certain customs and ways of doing things because they give us warm feelings about the good old days. Sitting in services with our grandparents, surrounded by our cousins. Hearing the old rabbi speak in that booming voice that sounded like God. Tasting the cookies at the oneg and running around the building with our friends. But, of course, there is actually very little of anything we do that, quote, we've always done, especially in Reform Judaism. Because Reform Judaism is, in its very essence and philosophical DNA, all about change. I've been thinking about this all week because I've been here not 2 months yet, almost 2 months, but I have officially encountered my first major debate at Temple Beth-El of my tenure. And that debate is, wait for it, maybe you can guess, whether or not to stand for the last verse of Lecha Dodi. Now, I gather that this has been a topic of some discontent long before my arrival, but by asking people to rise at this moment in the service without also explicitly inviting you to remain seated, if that's what you prefer to do, I have unwittingly deepened the controversy. Now, I have to say in my defense that I've just done this reflexively. I haven't given it any thought at all, let alone acted with any design. Because in my 14 years as a rabbi in both congregations I served previously, well, we stood for the last verse of Lecha Dodi, and I just assumed that that's what we do here too. It certainly did not occur to me that this practice would be in any way controversial, but I was wrong. To stand or not to stand? That is the question. Now, this is actually a centuries-old debate in Judaism, not only regarding Lecha Dodi, but also in regard to the Shema. Maybe you didn't realize that, but way back in the Mishnah, Hillel and Shammai argued about whether you should stand or sit for the Shema. They argued about everything. That's one of the things they debated. And I wonder if you can guess what the traditional practice is, which they conclude in the Talmud and in the halakha that we should do. Believe it or not, the traditional custom is to sit for the Shema. Check it out next time you visit an Orthodox or conservative synagogue. You'll see that they sit for the Shema. Now, is that weird? Aren't we supposed to stand for the Shema? I mean, it is the watchword of our faith. That's what, we've always said. Haven't we always stood for the Shema? Well, not always. Actually, during Hillel's time and for about the next 2,000 years, pretty much everyone sat for the Shema. Even Reform Jews sat for the Shema for a long time. According to the historian Jonathan Sarna, who writes about American Judaism, the foremost historian of it, it was only in the late 19th century that Reform Jews in America adopted the custom of standing for the Shema and saying it together in unison. And they did it, as Sarna explains, as an ideological statement, an assertion of their unique religious identity in relation to the Christian culture around them. As much as our Reformed forebears wanted to assimilate and to be not too different from their Christian neighbors, they also wanted to stand proudly for their own particular brand of religion by saying, hey, we are the ones who are the true monotheists here. So they stood up and proclaimed Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. In other words, our custom of standing for the Shema originated as a soft but pointed anti-Christian polemic. Now it's just what we've always done. But in the grand scheme of Jewish history, the late 19th century is pretty much like last week. And Reform Judaism has made other ideologically driven changes too. The sages who composed our daily liturgy originally chose a passage from this week's parashah for us to say along with the Shema right after the Ve'ahavta. That passage, which comes from Deuteronomy chapter 11, says, in a nutshell, if you do all of God's commandments, the skies will open and the rain will fall and water your crops. But if you don't do the commandments, well, then you're in trouble because the skies will close and there will be no rain. This passage has been part of the traditional Shema for centuries, but the rabbis and scholars who wrote our Reform prayer books got rid of it. Why? Because classical Reform Judaism aimed to be a religion that was, as they put it, in accord with the postulates of reason and science. And reason and science tell us that doing the commandments or not doing them has absolutely no bearing on whether or not it rains. We know that. So even Mishkan Tefillah, this prayer book that we use now, which includes so much more of the traditional liturgy than ever before in Reformed prayer books, even this book omits this passage from the Shema. And we might say, for good reason. We want our prayers to accurately express who we are and what we believe. Which brings us now to Lecha Dodi. The Talmud tells us that some of the sages had the custom of wrapping themselves in beautiful cloaks on Friday night and going outside to greet what they called the Shabbat bride. And then in the 16th century in Sfat, in the land of Israel, some of the Jewish mystics who lived there picked up on this idea of the Shabbat bride, or this image, and they taught that Shabbat is kind of like a wedding day between God and the Jewish people, where we come together as one. That's the spiritual imagery that they painted. So standing and turning to face the door of the sanctuary at the end of Lecha Dodi is essentially the Kabbalistic equivalent of what many secular Americans or Americans of all faiths do whenever they attend a wedding, which is at some point the processional music pauses and everyone stands up and faces the door, and the bride walks in wearing her stunning white dress, and we all marvel at her radiant beauty, and the energy in the room is tangible and it's electric. So standing at the end of Lecha Dodi is the same thing. When congregations started singing Lecha Dodi, which is a poem for Shabbat written by a Kabbalist named Shlomo Alkabetz in the 16th century, many of them adopted the custom of standing and facing the door for the last verse. But remember about classical Reform Judaism, which comes several centuries later. It prided itself on being rationalist and scientific as a form of religion. And Kabbalah, well, is pretty much exactly the opposite of that. It's abstract, it's otherworldly. Detractors might say it's hokey. And there's another thing. Reform leaders also objected to Lecha Dodi's theology, which maybe you have noticed or not, it prays for the Messiah to come and bring all the Jews back to the land of Israel. We don't usually sing that verse, but it's in there. And as my teacher, Rabbi David Ellenson, explains it, this theology made early modern Jews nervous that this prayer would imply they did not feel fully at home in their host countries. So, not only did early Reformed congregations not stand for the last verse of Lecha Dodi, they didn't even sing Lecha Dodi at all. Take a look at the Union Prayer Book, which I know many of us in this congregation grew up with. Lecha Dodi isn't even in it. Which means there was a time when Reformed Jews never sang Lecha Dodi. My guess is that when Temple Beth-El was founded in the late 1920s, the congregation probably used the Union Prayer Book, which meant that there was no Lecha Dodi in the service. And then at some point, we changed to Gates of Prayer, which was the next book. And I don't know, maybe Lecha Dodi was added or maybe not. And now we use Mishkan Tefillah, and we do Lecha Dodi every Friday night. So can we really say that any way at all is the way we've always done it? Reform Judaism is constantly changing because our particular tastes are always changing. The world around us is always changing. The ideas and practices and teachings we find compelling are always changing. One of the great things about this prayer book that we use, Mishkan Tefillah, is that it doesn't include any stage directions in print. Now, you might remember that the old prayer books, would say after a particular prayer, all are seated or all rise, something like that. We don't have that in Mishkan Tefillah, and that was intentional, so that each congregation and each individual congregant can decide for themselves what they want to do, what prayers they want to read, when they want to sit, and when they want to stand. For the sake of Shalom Bayit, which means peace in the home, peace in the congregational home, from this point forward, when we come to the last verse of Lecha Dodi, I will invite you to stand if you want to stand, and sit if you want to sit. And I made myself a sign here so that I'll remember to do it. Because remember, for 14 years, I've just been standing. But please know this. It makes absolutely no difference to me whether you stand or you sit. Honestly, I could care the less. In the words of the Orthodox Halachic authority, Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, who was very openly not an admirer of Reform Judaism, people will do what they wish, and as long as the intent is to honor Shabbat, it's fine. That's what Feinstein wrote about the practice of standing at the last verse of Lecha Dodi. Each of us believes in our own way and has the right to practice in our own way. In Reform Judaism, the only thing that matters is your intention. So, to stand or not to stand? If that's your question, my answer is, do what feels right to you. Do what is meaningful to you. And don't wait for a rabbi or a cantor to tell you what you should do. All of us have individual autonomy. That's a core principle of Reform Judaism, and it means we have the right to make our own religious decisions and practice as we see fit. And I encourage you to use that autonomy. Because that, my friends, is how we in Reform Judaism have always done it. Page 20, Lecha Dodi, let's put it into practice.
Lai, 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 la, 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 lai. Lecha dodi likrat kala pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala pnei Shabbat nekabela. Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad Hishemianu el hamyuchad Adonai echad u'shemo echad L'shem u'tiferet v'litila Lecha dodi Likrat kala pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala pnei Shabbat nekabela. Hitoreri Kiva orech kumi ori Ori shir daberi Kevod Adonai alaych nigala Lecha dodi likrat kala pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala pnei Shabbat nekabela.
If you would like to rise to greet the Shabbat bride, I invite you to do so. If it is not your custom to rise, please feel comfortable to remain seated.
Boi v'shalom ateret bala Gam b'simcha u'v'tzola Toch emunei am segula Boi chala lecha dodi Likrat kala pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala pnei Shabbat nekabela.
Page 22. A psalm, a song for Shabbat. It is good to praise Adonai, to sing hymns to your name, O Most High, to proclaim your steadfast love at daybreak, your faithfulness each night, with a 10-stringed harp, with voice and lyre together. You have gladdened me by your deeds, Adonai. I shout for joy at your handiwork. How great are your works, Adonai! How very subtle your designs! A brute cannot know, a fool cannot understand this. The righteous bloom like a date palm. They thrive like a cedar in Lebanon. Planted in the house of Adonai, they flourish in the courts of our God. In old age, they still produce fruit. They are full of sap and freshness, attesting that Adonai is upright, my rock, in whom there is no wrong.
Tzadik atamar yifrach ke'erez balvanon yizgeh shetulim beveit Adonai bechatzrot Eloheinu yafrichu od yenuvon beseva teshem Avlatabo.
Page 25 at the bottom of the page together. And so we understand that ordinary people are messengers of the Most High. They go about their tasks in holy anonymity, often even unknown to themselves. Yet if they had not been there, if they had not said what they said or did what they did, it would not be the way it is now. We would not be the way we are now. Never forget that you too yourself may be a messenger, perhaps even one whose errand extends over several lifetimes. On the opposite page.
Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem L'Shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech Malachei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruchuni L'Shalom Malachei Hashalom Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech Malachei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Seitechem L'Shalom Malachei Hashalom Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech Malachei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
Page 28. Please rise.
La 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 la. Am I awake? Am I prepared? Are you listening to my prayer? Can you hear my voice? Can you understand? Are you listening to my prayer? Barechu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam va'ed, Le'olam va'ed. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Page 30. La 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 la. Blessed are you, Adonai, ruler of the universe,
who speaks the evening into being, skillfully opens the gates, thoughtfully alters the time and changes the seasons, and arranges the stars in their heavenly courses according to plan. You are creator of day and night, rolling light away from darkness and darkness from light, transforming day into night and distinguishing one from the other. Adonai Tsevaot is your name. Ever-living God, may you reign continually over us into eternity. Blessed are you, Adonai, who brings on evening.
ומעביר יום ומביא לילה, ומבדיל בין יום ובין לילה, אדוני צבאות שמו, אל חי וקיים, תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד, ברוך אתה אדוני, המעריב הערבים. Page 33. Wisdom and wonder, passion and instruction, story and symbol, all these things your Torah gives to us. And the more we devote ourselves to it, the more it grows and gives. What could be a truer token of your abiding love than this holiest of your works and the living language that gives it form? Baruch ata Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael.
Page 34.
Hear, O Israel, Adonai, our God is one. Hear, O Israel, Adonai, our God is one. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Vaed.
Page 36.
That's the way we've always done it. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha bechol levavcha uvechol nafshecha uvechol meodecha vehayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi metzavecha hayom al levavecha ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם. Before we say Adonai Elohechem Emet, because we're not going on. So I wanted to just point something out that has been also a slight, subtle shift for those of us who have been reciting Ve'ahavta this certain way through the many years, and we do Al mezuzot beitecha uvi she'arecha, and we keep going Lema'an tizkeru, but suddenly we heard something a little bit different tonight, right? We heard Al mezuzot beitecha uvi she'arecha, which is the Sof Aliyah trope. Right? That's the end of the verse of an aliyah, of a section of Torah. And we do that a little differently now. The rabbi is doing that differently because that's the very spot where that part of prayer, that piece of liturgy, has been excised from the prayer book. That's why we did that little piece differently tonight. Just like we've always done it.
Thanks for pointing that out, Cantor.
Very cool. Let's continue with some words of redemption.
Page 41, let's read together in English. Sing the song of men and women joined in understanding and respect. The song of God's miracles, an earth protected and cherished, a gift for our children and the generations to come. the song of a land once ravished by war, now quiet and content. Her soldiers home to leave no more. The song of a world redeemed, the song of peace.
Peace, page 40. Mocha, Bailim Adonai, Mika Mocha, Medar Bakodesh, Nora, Tehilot, Ose, Fele, Nora, Tehilot, Ose, Fele. Malchutecha ra'uvanecha bokei ayam lifnei Moshe uMiriam Zeli anu ve'amru Zeli anu ve'amru Adonai yimloch leolam va'ed Adonai yimloch leolam va'ed Lai 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 V'ne'emar ki vada Adonai et Yaakov Ugoalo mi'ad chazak mimenu Baruch ata Adonai Gal Yisrael.
On the next page, 42.
Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom Leshalom Ve'yamidenu Shomreinu lechayim Ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha Ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha Amen. Shelter us beneath your wings, O Adonai. Keep us from all harmful things, O Adonai. Shelter us beneath the night. Teach us from all wrong from right. Guard us with your faithful light. Amen. At the bottom paragraph of 42. Baruch atah Adonai haporei sukkot shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael. Ve'al Yerushalayim ve'al kol amo. Ve'al Yerushalayim shalom. Ve'al Yerushalayim ve'al kol amo. Ve'al Yerushalayim shalom. Baruch atah Adonai haporei sukkot shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol amo Israel.
Page 45. At the top together. We are a people in whom the past endures, in whom the present is inconceivable without moments gone by. The Exodus lasted a moment enduring forever. What happened once upon a time happens all the time.
Page 44. V'shamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat La'asot et ha-Shabbat L'dorotam brit olam ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל עוד היא לעולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני, עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ. וביום השביעי שבת, שבת וינפש. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת.
We'll continue on to page 46. We'll rise and chant the beginning of the Amidah together. After we've chanted the first three blessings of the Amidah through page 52, then we will continue in silent prayer. If at that moment you would like to remain standing to continue your prayer, please feel free to do so. If, on the other hand, you prefer to sit, it is perfectly fine to do that as well.
Adonai Svatay Tiftach, Adonai Svatay Tiftach, Ufi Yagid Tehilatecha, Ufi Yagid Tehilatecha. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei Avotenu ve'Imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, ve'Elohei Leah. האל הגדול הגיבור והנורא, אל עליון, גומל חסדים טובים וקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה. מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם ועזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי הכל אתה רב להושיע, מוריד הטל, מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עבר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות ומדומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה להחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי הכל. page 52. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וכראשים בכל יום יעללוך סלע. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש. feel free to continue your private meditations at your own pace, whether you are standing or sitting, or join me on page 62 for a prayer of wholeness and peace. Ose shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu. Ose shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu. Ose shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu. Ya'aseh shalom, ya'aseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Ya'aseh shalom, ya'aseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Ose shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu. Ose shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu. Ose shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu. Ya'aseh shalom, ya'aseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Ya'aseh shalom, ya'aseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Ya'aseh shalom, ya'aseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Ya'aseh shalom, ya'aseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael.
We pray now for our loved ones, friends, family members, and members of our community who are ill and in need of God's healing and God's peace. Now we're going to do something a little differently this evening, which I understand is perhaps the way we've always done it, at least for a little while, and that is I'm going to invite you, if you'd like to share a name, to let me know so that I can come by your seat and invite you to say the name into the microphone. We'll also invite our friends who are on Zoom to type their names of the people they'd like to pray for into the chat, and Cantor can read them for us. So if you're praying for someone and you'd like to share their name, okay, let's see here. Susan.
Mark Sofer.
Thank you, Susan. Okay, Donna G.
Richie Penchansky and Judy Hewlett.
Thank you, Donna G.
Elaine Nelson and Shirley Seipel.
Thank you, Linda.
Gail Shalom and Stephen Biegelman.
Thank you, Beth.
Roy Tornberg, Marie Lavin.
Thank you, Phil.
My son Rick.
Thank you, Roberta. Excuse me, Beth, I'm going to come in here.
Sarah Bank.
Thank you, Arlene. Okay, I'm going to come back. Let's figure this out.
Shani Lauren.
Thank you, Roz. Thank you, Claire.
Lee Seaman.
Thank you, Renee. Thank you. Thank you, Susan.
Sarah Mindelbus, Lucas Lata.
Thank you, Madeline.
Lois Goldner and Benjamin Hecht.
you, Susan.
Okay. Shania, Elia, Bat, and Tamar, Israela, Hinda.
Thank you, Lynn.
I'm praying for my sister Isabel and my friend Veronica, all who are needing prayer. Heal.
Thank you, Martha. Okay, we're going to come around this way now. Please raise your hand if you have a name and you haven't said it yet.
Sally Wolf.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. Gilda.
Sally Wolf, my cousin Jerry.
Thank you, Elaine.
Salim Day.
Thank you, Howard.
We'll add to that list
Oh,
Helene
oh,
Greenbaum, Michael Herman, and Sophie.
Bonnie Ellman.
Thank you, Michael.
Peter Hort.
Thank you. And remind me your name. Cheryl. Thank you, Cheryl.
With that, let's turn to the middle of page 253.
Did we get the names of unsung?
Mi sheberach avoteinu mekor habracha leimotenu. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mi sheberach imotenu mekor habracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shelema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
Page 282, please rise.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל עמונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. 287 ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד.
Please be seated. We remember now our loved ones whom death has taken from this world. If it is your custom and you're comfortable and able to do so, I invite you to rise as you hear the name of your loved one read. On this Shabbat, we are in Shiva the first 7 days of mourning for Jeffrey Cohen. We are in Shloshim, the first 30 days of mourning for Lois Frankel and Lisa Cursius. And we recall the yahrzeits of Norman Brandeis, Arthur G. Cohen, Sheila Goldick, Arnold Goldstein, Simon Grolnick, Murray London, Benjamin Nassau, Herbert Michael Plain, Saul Schneider, Herman Weiner, and Rose Wolf. If there's someone whom you're remembering whose name was not read and you'd like to share it with us, I invite you to do so now. Thank you, Barbie. Thank you. Thank you, Jane. Zichronam livracha, may their memories be for a blessing. If it is your custom to rise for the Kaddish, I invite you to do so now. If it is your custom to remain seated, please feel comfortable doing so. Page 294. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemeh rabba.
Amen.
Ve'alma divra chirute v'yamelich malchute. B'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chaye dechol beit Yisrael. Ba'agala uvizman kariv ve'imru amen. Yehe shemeh rabba mevorach le'alam ulalmei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shemei dekudasha barichu. La'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tush bechata v'nechemata. Da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen.
Amen.
Yehe shlama rabba min shemaya. V'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen.
Amen.
Oseh shalom mimromav. Hu ya'aseh shalom. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen.
Amen.
May the one who makes harmony on high bring peace to us, to all Israel, and to all the world. May their memories be for a blessing. And we say together,
Amen.
Shabbat shalom, everyone.
You may be seated.
Please be seated. Yes. Shabbat shalom, everyone. Okay. So let's see. First of all, thank you to Shai and to Cantor Adam and to Jason for helping to make our service beautiful and energetic and meaningful. Jason is running our Zoom and making it possible for our friends online to participate. Let's see here. Tomorrow morning, we have our Torah study at 9:15, followed by our Shabbat morning minyan at 10:30. Now, here's the thing, friends. Not showing up for services on Saturday morning may in fact be the way we've always done it. But it is in fact time to change. Please join us for Shabbat morning services at 10:30. Thank you for the applause. All right. Challah, thanks to the Margaloff family for baking the challah this evening, and to our Oneg bakers. And I'm going to invite you to rise and to be recognized. Roberta Lulov. Linda Diamond.
In the flesh.
Sharon Freeman. Donna Ganser. Ellen Sathian. I don't know, is Aaron here? Did Aaron bake this week? Next week, Aaron will be baking.
We'll hold you to it.
Now, we know, thank you all, we know that there are many, many wonderful bakers in our membership, and you have yet to come forward to reveal your hidden talents. But we need you. And so I would invite you to please step up. You know who to call in the temple office, the one, the only, Joy P.
Palevsky.
You just call Joy P and say, I'd like to bake. It's that easy. And then you will get set up to bake. And so we hope that you will do that. Cantor, do you have any announcements to add?
The high holy days are coming. I don't know if you knew that, but they will be here soon.
They will be here soon. In fact, there is something I want to announce about that. So we're introducing a new spiritual practice for the holidays this year. Next weekend begins the month of Elul. That's the month in the Hebrew calendar leading into Rosh Hashanah. So on this coming Friday, you're going to get an email in your inbox telling you that Elul is about to begin, and that every day during the month of Elul, Sunday through Friday, you're going to receive an email with a short quote or poem or reading or something to help you think and reflect during the time of Elul in preparation for the high holidays. We call them Elul spiritual nuggets because they're just little nuggets to read through the day to help you with your contemplation. The nuggets have been selected by Cantor Adam and me on the 4 themes of the high holidays, which are Teshuvah, repentance, Tefillah, prayer, Tzedakah, righteous giving, and Slicha, forgiveness. So watch for those, and I invite you to read them and just give them some thought. It'll only take you about 10 seconds to read it. And I hope that it will enrich your preparation for the holidays. So with that, I'm going to invite somebody to lead us in the Kiddush and the Motzi. And I'm looking. Yes. Great idea. If you are under the age of 18 and you are here, or you are a child at heart and you'd like to come up, please come on up.
You can follow along on page 4.
And I'll invite you to, dare I say it, please rise for the Kiddush.
ויהי רבעי בוקר יום השישי, ויחולו השמיים והארץ וכל צבאם, ויכל אלוהים ביום השביעי מלאכתו אשר עשה, וישפוט ביום השביעי מכל מלאכתו אשר עשה. ויברך אלוהים את יום השביעי, ויקדש אותו, כי היבו שבת מכל מלאכתו, אשר ברא אלוהים לעשות צברי.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם,
בורא פרי הגפן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר קישנו במצוותיו ורצה בנו, ושבת קודשו באהבה וברצון הנחילנו, זיכרון למעשה וראשית, כי הוא יום תחילה למקראי קודש, זכר ליציאת מצרים, כי בנו בחרת ואותנו קידשת מכל העמים, ושבת קודשך באהבה וברצון הנחלתנו. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש Shabbat. Take a sip. Are we good?
All right, ready? 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, and
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz.
beautiful job.
Take a bite.
Yasher Koach.
Take a bite
Shabbat
now.
Shalom.
All right, let's conclude on page 353 at the bottom of the page. Od yavo shalom aleinu, od yavo shalom aleinu, od yavo shalom aleinu ve'al kulam. Od yavo shalom aleinu, od yavo shalom aleinu, od yavo shalom aleinu ve'al kulam. Salam aleinu ve'al kol ha'olam. Salam, salam, salam aleinu ve'al kol ha'olam. Salam, salam. Od yavo shalom aleinu, od yavo shalom aleinu, od yavo shalom aleinu ve'al al kulam. Shabbat shalom.